G'day folks, I'm back. So here I am, thankfully on a contractor job, a private contractor job, which pays a little bit more than my subcontract maintenance work, which has dried up. Luckily, I had a phone call for a private job, and so this is filling the void. What we have here is a typical mid-20th century Art Deco home, most notably recognised by a different fancy cornice in each room and the very most obvious picture rail that goes around 3/4 of the way up the wall. They're the main features of when you want to, identify a mid-century Art Deco. Often fireplaces are a giveaway. An age giveaway are the vents, in the cavity vents that are in the walls. A lot of people fill them in these days, but my understanding, of course, is that they are for airflow in the cavity of the frame and the outside cladding, so that everything remains dry in there. Now, the problem with this place, the owner had it vacated, the tenants vacated in December of 24, and then it sat for a month, the whole month of January, and no one had been in here. The owner was away overseas, and the real estate that was handling the rental had not come in for an inspection for at least a month. In that time, a washing machine hot water tap was running. I'm not sure if it was left on, but I believe it was either leaking severely or running for a month, where the water was dispersing straight to the floor and out of the house. Thankfully, it wasn't flooding the house. However, it was the hot water running for all that time, and when they finally came into the house, it was well over 100% humidity. All the walls were simply dripping with condensation, and all the ceilings developed pretty much rot and mold all over the place. As heat rises, obviously, it was more severe up top. And so we have a combination in this job that we're going to rip out all the ceilings, rehang them, and we're going to batten them so that they're nice and level. Because these old houses, they're never really that level. But when you suspend new battens from the original hardwood timbers, you can have the opportunity to get them perfectly level. So we're doing that, and then in select rooms we're taking off the picture rail and replacing the upper quarter with new sheet, because most of the walls, the 3/4 high walls from the floor, are all in pretty good condition, and so it would be kind of pointless to replace all that. Whereas some rooms are a little bit further gone, and so the entire walls of those rooms will be stripped and redone with new plasterboard. And so that's where I'm at now. I've stripped out one room, one bedroom, and he wants to start with one bedroom because he wants to get it finished so that all things can be moved into there and stored in there, which is probably a good idea. And so I'm starting with the battens, and I have my first level batten. And what you want to do when you have a house that has floors that fall away, maybe sunken stumps and the floor has fallen away to one corner or something like that, and therefore you have an unlevel floor, well, it's hard to work off a level ceiling. And then you have old ceiling timbers that are kind of like a roller coaster. They're up and they're down and all that. So you've got to take several measurements from floor to ceiling to find the lowest measurement and start there reasonably tight with your bracket, your batten bracket. If you're smart and you've got money, you buy a very expensive laser, set that up and work everything off the laser. If you are not so smart like me and you don't have the money to buy said laser, well, you just use a straight edge and a level and struggle that way. And that's the way I'm doing it. These three were my lowest point. In fact, the one with the nail was tied up to that timber. As you can see, a slight gap, so I had to shift it down a little bit. You can see the middle chasm of that bracket has you can slide up and down. Sorry, that bottom screw there, you put it in there and you can slide up and down until you're level, and then just screw it off tight. And the others aren't too bad, but you'll see that that gap gets a little bit wider this end. So that shows you the nature of the house's ceiling timbers, that they're not all perfectly level, they're up, they're down. And so you have to get your batten nice and level to start off. And that's how you do that. Now we just work out from the center to each end of the room. In my case, using the straight edge and level to work everything off this batten. And then she'll be perfect. So as you can see, I have my already fixed off first batten perfectly level from that way to that way. Now what I want to do is send battens left and right of that over to that wall and over to this wall and have them perfectly level off this one. So I've gone to the fully outside one and I've tentatively clipped in a batten using the center slider option, so I can release that screw and slide up and down. And I've done one at that end, and you can also see I have my white straight edge just on the other side of that timber, but sitting on top of each of these battens. Now there is a tentatively fixed clip, however that's not currently level. So all I have to do is put my small level on that batten. Well, I'll show you. I am filming all of this with my handheld phone camera. I don't have any of my cameras here, so I have to do this or set up this in some way that I can show you. So let's give that a go. So here we are with our straight edge sitting on there. There's our clip. Has a screw, in fact it doesn't have a screw yet, it's just hanging. Because I've basically got a tentative fix there and a tentative fix at the other end. So I want to get this middle section level first. So as you can see, it's not too bad. I'm slightly out of level. However, if I slide this up and down, I can get it perfectly centered. Now what I can do from here, you see this little tab sticking out? It's got a point on it. I can bring my hammer up and just slam that into the timber, and that'll be a tentative hold at that level until I put a couple of screws in it to secure it. I'll see if I can film that by setting the camera up somewhere. But either way, I've got to hold this up and down level, bring my hammer up in my right hand and hammer that in, and that'll hold. So there you go. As you can see, I have hammered that little tab into the timber and it's holding, and you can see the straight edge has gone up a little bit beside that timber. See how it's a little bit down from there, and that's the difference of the ceiling level. But that is nice and level. It's within parameters. And so all I have to do now is go to each bracket and do the same thing. Make sure it's all nice and level off our first batten. And from that point, the ones in the middle, between that batten and this batten, there'll be another 3 across there. All I've got to do is leave this straight edge, move this straight edge along and meet the batten and brackets to the straight edge, and they'll be perfectly level with all the others. And then I go across the other side and continue over to that wall. Now these battens are spaced, and I'll use metric here, are spaced 450 millimeters apart because of the type of board I'm using. There are different types of board. There are more reinforced ceiling boards that can have wider spread battens to 600 millimeters reinforced ceiling board, or you can use normal wall board, which is not reinforced, but you just have to bring your battens closer to 450 millimeter centers. It's kind of cheaper that way because the cost of the reinforced board is a fair bit higher than the normal board. So all you do is just use an extra batten or two and you bring them in closer and you use normal board on the ceiling. And so that's what we're doing here. All of these battens will be spaced at 450 millimeters apart. I have a little bit of excess here at this end. I'm just going to throw in another batten pretty much up against the wall, just so there's not too much sheet overhang. But I'll show you the end result. The other thing to note is that you'll see these two brackets, 1, 2, but I don't have one on the timber in between. The span between these two brackets is about 900 millimeters. These battens are engineered that they can span 1100 millimeters without support. And so I'm well inside that, and so I don't need to do every timber. You could if you wanted to, but according to Australian standards, this metal batten can span 1100 millimeters without support. And as mine are only 900 apart, every second one, I don't need to do the center one. So that's another time saving, money saving situation there. So here I've got the straight edge spanning across the two finished and level battens, this one and that one. I have a second inner batten up now with a already tentatively screwed clip, and the batten is clipped in, but when I move the straight edge over, you can see the gap between that one and that one over there. So all I do now is I release that screw just a little bit, and I send the straight edge back, and I just slide the clip up and down, or I just slide the clip up, close that gap to the straight edge, tap that tab in for a tentative hold. As you can see, I've got timber eaten away here. I may not even be able to do that, but that was what I would normally do. Give that a tap in just to hold it, retighten that screw and put a second screw in. So our batten is now up tight to the straight edge. I only just had enough purchase for that little tab to dig into and hold until I put the two screws in. So that's all I'll do for each one. Another one there, another one there, and all the way across there. The other thing about these, about screwing into these very old hardwood timbers, is you often get almost to the very end and it'll snap the head off. I haven't had that happen yet. So thankfully at the moment these aren't as hard as they could be, because I've had moments where 50% of the time I'll snap a head and I've got to bring out another screw, or revert to hammering a nail in, which can be hard into very hard timber. So far so good. And there we have it. One room battened out, and it's raining. You could probably hear that. Next step is to hang the ceilings, plasterboard, and then these top walls. So tune in next time for hanging plasterboard.